Hello everyone, we're getting together today to sew our Pharaoh baby pattern. Pharaoh is a totally mixed jumpsuit, romper and dress pattern. The garment will be voluminous for an overly cute effect. Many versions are available to suit every occasion. All you have to do is mix and match the options to get your perfect version. The skill level is intermediate, with a few technical points but nothing insurmountable. Let's take a look at the different versions of the pattern. Starting with the length, we have a pants version, a shorts version, and a dress. The pants and shorts can be elasticated at the bottom, giving very different results. We can also add a crotch opening, very practical for the child's diaper change. Next, we move on to the straps. Simple straps that meet at the back with a central button. Next, the same simple straps to which we've added a ruffle. The ruffle is taken from the front cutout, enlarged to cover the shoulders, and finished in the back with a beautiful rounded shape. The ruffles are fully lined for a beautiful finish. Finally, elasticated straps with integrated ruffle. This is a slightly different option we've developed for this pattern, allowing us to reinterpret the classic ruffle. In this case, the strap and ruffle form a single piece, which an elastic band gathers together while providing the necessary hold for a strap. It's an original detail that adds a touch of novelty. We're left with two options for the front: a gathered front or a front with box pleats. Both are easy to do, but add a really different look. As for the finish, the entire top is fully lined for perfection. The skill level is intermediate. The easiest versions, without crotch opening and simple straps, present no specific difficulty and are quick to sew. Then, as is often the case, adding options like the ruffle and crotch opening adds some technical points, but can be interesting for gradually challenging yourself in sewing. This pattern is designed to be sewn in warp and weft, in other words, in a woven fabric, and therefore, a priori, non-stretchable. It could also be sewn in knit, but the result will be different, probably a little looser. For the warm season, we recommend the following fabrics: poplin, batiste, dobby, double gauze, seersucker, viscose, broderie anglaise, chambray, linen. For the colder season, we recommend the following fabrics: light gabardine, baby corduroy, light denim. When it comes to supplies, you'll need different things, but most of them you'll have to choose according to your options. There are just two items you'll need: a button to attach the straps to the back, and the elastic for the waistband. For the button, we recommend a diameter of 15 millimeters, but you can adapt according to your desires. For the back elastic, you'll need a width of 2 centimeters from 1 to 18 months, and 2.5 centimeters from 2 to 4 years. For the crotch opening option, you'll need a thin fusible interlining and buttons or snaps. We recommend a 12 mm diameter, but here again, it's up to you. Then there are the elasticated options. We've provided a summary table in the guidebook, as there are quite a few options and elastic widths, from 1 to 3 centimeters. These elastics will be used to elasticate the lower legs and for the ruffled elasticated straps option. You can also imagine different elements to decorate the bib: piping, rickrack, lace, or even a label or patch. The application of these elements will not be explained in this video, but we have a number of specific technical videos that will help you, so don't hesitate to consult them in our dedicated playlist. Let's take a look at the different versions we've sewn together. We start with this gathered dress with elasticated shoulder straps with ruffle, sewn in one of our exclusive poplins. The particularity of this product is the hook we've added to the bib, adding a very sophisticated touch. We continue with this non-elasticated short version, sewn in a blue gingham and embellished with one of our exclusive patches. Intended for a little boy, we chose the box pleat option and simple straps. Then we have this romper version, which is the elasticated shorts with crotch opening. We added ruffles and gathered the front. We move on to this more autumnal, box-pleated trouser version in lightweight gabardine. The bib has been embellished with piping and a label. Now the versions we're going to sew together for this video. We have this version of elasticated pants with ruffles sewn in one of our exclusive Pope lines. The originality of this product is the quilted bib. We have this version with shorts and elasticated straps with ruffles sewn in baby corduroy. The fabric is a little thicker for a more wintry look, and we like to imagine it being worn over a sweater and with tights. Finally, a simple dress sewn into denim, with its simple straps and box pleats. It's a great wardrobe basic. Let's start by preparing the pattern pieces. The first step is to interface the crotch button plackets. If you've chosen this option, start with the front placket of the pants or shorts. Then the back placket of the pants or shorts. We interface two back plackets in symmetry if our fabric is thick, or all four pieces if our fabric is thin. We have a technical video dedicated to interfacing, so don't hesitate to watch it if you'd like all our tips for successful interfacing like a pro. We can now move on to overcasting the pieces. We overcast the outer curve of the button placket on the front of pants or shorts if crotch opening option, the sides of the fronts and backs of pants, shorts or skirts, the crotch on the back of pants or shorts, and the crotch on the front and back of pants or shorts if no crotch opening option. To finish the preparation, we'll iron hems. I like to preform my hems when the pieces are flat, as it's easier to get precise tucks, and will simplify our task when stitching the hems. Iron a 1 cm tuck at the top of the front and back facings of the pants or shorts. For this step, make sure you tuck the top of the piece and not the bottom. For the shorts pieces, this is crucial, and for the pants, it depends on the direction of your fabric. Next, iron a hem of 1 to 2 cm at the bottom of the skirts. In the same way, pay attention to the direction of the piece. If the fabric is plain, mark the top of the piece using the center and box pleat marks. To do this, I use this handy little ruler for precise hem ironing. Let's move on to preparing the straps this time. Starting with the single strap without ruffle, place two pieces right sides together, pin, then stitch at 7 mm. Stitch both lengths and the straight end. Repeat with the other two strap pieces. Now you can trim off the corners, which I do at all four corners of the piece. The straps are then turned inside out. Depending on the fabric, this step can be a little time-consuming. With my denim, it took me quite a while. I'll give you a time-saving tip next. At the end, make sure to turn the corners. I use a wooden ruler of just the right width to push the corners together. All that remains is to iron the piece. Now for the little trick that should save you time. First, sew the end of ribbon to the end of a strap. We can then pull on this ribbon, which will help us turn the strap inside out. The hardest part is getting it to turn over, but once you've done that, the strap just comes. Honestly, I've spent about 10 times less time turning my strap using this technique. Once the strap is turned over, all that's left to do is untie the ribbon. Alternatively, you could stitch only one of the two lengths, iron a 7 mm tuck on that length, and then top stitch all the way around the strap. The advantage of our suggested method is that there's no visible top stitching. We now place the straps on the right side of the outer bib, right between the mockings, and pin them in place, deforming them slightly so that they fit snugly around the bib. Pay particular attention to the direction of the straps. The longer length should be towards the outside of the bib. Now stitch the ends of both straps 5 mm into the seam allowances. Don't hesitate to stick out the ends before and after the braces to ensure they stay in place. Now that the straps are sewn, we can move on to the chapter on assembling the sides and bib. For straps with ruffles, start by ironing a 7 mm tuck on the longest length of two of the symmetrical straps. You could use the ruler I showed you earlier for precise sticking, but I have to admit that on small 7 mm tucks, I rely more on my eye and still manage to get precise tucks. Leave the tuck unfolded and place two pieces right sides together. Pin in place, then stitch at 7 mm the shorter of the two lengths, and the straight end. Repeat for the second strap, as I've already done here. We can now trim off the corners, in other words the top corner as well as the two end corners. This will give us less thickness when we turn the strap inside out. Iron the open seam as far as possible, then turn the strap inside out onto its right side, taking care to emphasize the corner. Iron well, but be careful not to iron over the previously marked tuck. Do the same on the second strap. Now for the ruffle. Place two ruffle pieces right sides together and stitch all along the 7mm rounding. Then repeat the operation with the other two ruffle pieces, as I've already done here. Open the seam with the iron as much as possible and turn the ruffle inside out on the right side. Work hard to get a nice rounding at the bottom of the ruffle, and if necessary, notch in the seam allowances of the rounding beforehand. I roll the selvage between my fingers to get everything just right. We'll now stitch two gathering threads along the height of the ruffles. The first is stitched at 5mm and the second at 10mm. The two layers are well stitched together. Don't forget to leave the threads sticking out at the beginning and end of the stitch, and stitch with a long stitch and low thread tension. Pin the middle and quarter heights of the ruffles. To do this, fold the piece in two to find the middle, and fold again to find the quarters. We'll do the same on the unfolded height of each strap, this time only between the mark and the rounded end. Place a ruffle right sides together along the untucked length of a shoulder strap, matching the pins with each other and the end of the ruffle with the mark on the shoulder strap. Then pull on the gathering threads on each side of the bobbin to gather the ruffles until they match in length with the straps. I distribute the gathers evenly, and I add new pins to hold them in place. We can now stitch the height of the ruffle to the strap at 7mm. Repeat all these steps for the second strap. We now iron a 7mm tuck in the continuity of the ruffle on the small part of the strap that was left free, and we take this opportunity to reform the pre-folded tuck on the other side of the strap. We'll sandwich the ruffle between the two pots of the strap and pin it in place, taking care to cover the previous stitching. I use the iron to get a precise result. You can now stitch the entire height to within 2mm of the unstitched edge of the strap. Then repeat all these operations on the other ruffle and the other strap. It's not always easy to get perfect stitching on both the right side and the wrong side. That's why I recommend stitching on the right side of the strap, to at least ensure that this stitching will be even. You might also prefer to baste by hand before machine stitching. Here the stitching is almost perfect, but it's true that this poplin is very easy to work with. All that remains is to remove the gathering threads. We'll stitch two gathering threads, again at 5 and 10mm, on the short height of the ruffles. Now place a strap and ruffle right sides together on the outer bib, following the markings for the strap itself. Pull on the gathering threads until the length of the ruffle matches the bib. Be careful, for the strap and ruffle to fit the rounded bib, they'll need to be deformed like this and, above all, pinned well. For this part, I don't bother locating the middles and quarters, I just do my gathering by eye. Now stitch 5mm into the seam allowances. Then we'll repeat the operation with the second strap and its ruffle, something I've already done here. For the elasticated strap with ruffle this time, start by folding the strap plus ruffle pieces right sides together and pinning. Stitch at 7mm along the curve and the bottom of the strap. The width of the strap is not the same for all sizes, so the width of the elastic must also be adapted accordingly. Everything is indicated in the measurement chart in the guidebook. We'll take a long length of elastic and align it with the bottom edges of the strap. Hold it in place by stitching in the groove of the previous seam. It's important that the length of the elastic is longer than the height of the strap, as this will simplify the task ahead. We can now mark the strap measurement on the elastic. This measurement varies according to garment size and is available in your illustrated guidebook. You should also be aware that when you top stitch this elastic, it may stretch slightly. This is difficult to predict and depends on the quality of the elastic, but you can take the liberty of taking a measurement slightly smaller than the one given in the table to anticipate this elongation. That's what I'm going to do here. Since the measurement in the chart is 33.1 centimeters, I'm going to make my mark at 32 centimeters. This measurement is to be taken from the stitch line, not the selvage. A word of advice: mark this measurement with a pen that won't fade in the heat, as the strap will be ironed right afterwards. I say this knowingly. We're now going to trim off the corners and notch where the strap meets the ruffle. Turn the straps inside out, and the elastic will be placed at the bottom of the strap. Turning the ruffle itself is no problem, but it's at the bottom of the strap with the elastic that it's a little more difficult. Before starting my turnaround, I make sure my elastic is flat and hasn't twisted. If it has twisted, it's not really serious, but it will be a little more difficult to turn over afterwards. So I go centimeter by centimeter. At the end, I use a wooden ruler to push back the end of the elastic and mark the corners at the same time. Once turned over, the elastic lies flat at the bottom of the strap. We work hard to obtain a nice rounding at the bottom of the straps, and if necessary we can notch in the seam allowances of the rounding beforehand. I roll the selvage between my fingers to get everything just right. I take my time ironing the piece. We'll stitch a kind of tunnel for the elastic, in continuity with the bottom of the strap. We'll enclose the elastic but not stitch it. I'm showing you the stitching because I've got a little trick for you. I start by shifting my needle slightly to the left. I start with a stop stitch. I then mark the edge of the elastic with my fingernail so that I have a reference point. I align this mark with the center mark on my presser foot. This gives me an even stitch, while ensuring that I never sew the elastic. Of course, I make sure that my elastic is wedged in the bottom of the fold. Pull on the elastic until you see the mark made just before. Then stitch the elastic into the seam allowances of the shoulder strap to hold it in place. I take this opportunity to start distributing the gathers. Optionally, 2 top stitches can be made on the straps. I'll trace 2 marks for myself, centered on the bottom of the strap. We prefer to start the stitching at the bottom of the strap. I'll show you right away on the machine. I place my needle according to my first mark and look to see which mark it corresponds to on my machine's plate. It's this mark that will enable me to stitch straight all the way through. I start to make a few stitches to block my stitching, and now I can start my top stitching. It's important to stretch the elastic throughout the stitching so as to stitch on a flat surface. So I leave my needle stuck in the fabric and stretch the elastic, holding it both in front and behind the presser foot. Incidentally, at the start of my stitching, I can't access the strap behind the presser foot, so I use my stitching threads to get a grip. I stitch portion by portion, keeping a close eye on my mark. We prefer to start at the bottom of the strap, as it's easier to stretch the elastic with the excess that sticks out. Even so, if you don't manage to get a perfectly flat surface and stitch a few pleats, it's not a big deal, as they won't be visible in the middle of all the gathers. Here's how it looks when finished on one line. I just need to stitch the second. This is how it looks when top stitched. I'm showing you next to the strap I haven't top stitched yet. You can see that top stitching harmonizes the gathers and flattens the strap. Personally, I find it prettier top stitched, but of course it's up to you. In the same way, you can see that they've loosened my elastic a little, and that I was right to go for a slightly shorter length. We still have to cut off the excess elastic protruding from the strap, as it won't be useful for the rest of the operation. I shot an extra sequence to share a tip with you. My elastic had become very loose, and unfortunately my bra strap was longer than the recommended length. So I came up with a simple solution. I used an iron to steam the gathers, allowing the elastic to retract and regain its original shape. You can see the difference between the top strap, which I steamed, and the bottom one, which I did not. This way, my straps are the perfect size. Now stitch 2 gathering threads, the first at 5 and the second at 10 millimeters, on the small height of the ruffles. Once again, stitch with the longest stitch and low tension. Now place a strap and ruffle right sides together on the outer bib, following the markings for the strap itself. Pull on the gathering threads until the length of the ruffle matches the bib. Be careful, for the strap and ruffle to adapt to the rounded shape of the bib, you'll need to deform them like this and, above all, pin them well. For this part, I don't bother locating the middles and quarters, I just do my gathering by eye. Now stitch 5 millimeters into the seam allowances. Then we'll repeat all these operations with the second strap plus ruffle, something I've already done here. We won't hide the fact that it doesn't look like much as it is, but you can unfold the straps to see what it's going to look like. Start by placing 2 pieces right sides together, then stitch the rounding at 7 millimeters. Trim the seam allowances to 4 millimeters and notch in the rounding. Then turn the piece inside out and iron. I start by opening the seam with an iron, then take care to align the selvages before ironing. We'll repeat these steps for the second side, which I've already done here. Now place the sides right sides together on the outer bib, aligning the bottom selvages with the mark at the top. Be careful not to reverse the direction of the side piece, the small end is up, and the larger end on the side. Both sides are stitched 5 millimeters apart in the seam allowances. I'm showing you here a version without ruffles, as it's visually clearer, but the principle is identical for the other options. Here's what it looks like with ruffles, sandwiched between the bib and the side. We now place the inner bib on the outer bib right sides together, sandwiching the straps, sides and ruffles, if any. You can use the markings to help you align the 2 bibs. Then stitch the sides and top of the bib at 7 millimeters in one go. In the same way, I show you here a version with ruffles. You can see that there's a lot of material, but the principle is still the same. You'll just have to take your time to be a little more precise. We're going to trim the seam allowances in the rounded areas of the bib and notch to get nice rounded edges. Finally, turn the bib inside out on the right side and pull out all the pieces. The bib can now be ironed. Take your time with the rounding, as this will be a very visible spot and is quite characteristic of this pattern. Now it's time to assemble the waistband. The principle is identical for the pants or shorts waistband and the skirt waistband. Only the length of the piece differs. We wanted a greater volume of gathers for the skirt, which is why the pieces are not the same. Start by folding the waistband wrong sides together lengthwise and ironing. We now cut the waist elastic according to the measurements on the chart available in the paper or PDF guidebook. The width of the elastic will depend on the size chosen. Place the elastic in the waistband and wedge it at the bottom of the fold, aligning the ends. Stitch 5 millimeters into the seam allowances at each end to hold the elastic in place. The elastic is smaller than the waistband, which is normal. Stretch the elastic and pin it well to the bottom of the waistband to distribute the gathers and prevent it from moving too much for the rest of the process. Place one end of the waistband right sides together with one outer side. Turn the inner side inside out and place it over the outer side and waistband. The waistband end is thus sandwiched between the 2 sides, and the selvages are aligned. If the fabric has a direction, be careful not to make a mistake. It would be a shame to have wrong side waistband. Stitch at 7 millimeters. Repeat with the second end in the same way, but check that the waistband doesn't twist from side to side. To be on the safe side, I place my pin and check before stitching. For this chapter, I'm going to show you how to assemble a pants version, but of course the principle is absolutely identical for a shorts version. First, Place the back's right sides together, aligning the selvages of the crotches, and pin. Then stitch at 7 mm and press open. Next, place the front and back right sides together, aligning the sides, and pin. Again, stitch both sides at 7 mm and press open. For the option without crotch opening, we'll also align the crotch edges, matching the middles and bottom of the legs. I then pin between the two on each side. Stitch at 7 mm. Finally, iron the seam open. Place the two skirts' right sides together, aligning the side selvages. Stitch at 7 mm on both sides and press open. We now reform the hem at the bottom of the skirt that we prepared earlier. Fold in a first tuck of 1 cm and a second of 2 cm. Pin and stitch the hem close to the selvage. This is how it looks when stitched. Preforming the folds helps us to get something perfectly even. Let's start with the box pleat option. We'll fold the top of the front of the bottom, meaning the pants, shorts or skirt, wrong sides together at the outer marks, and bring these folds back to the center mark. Here I've put pins at each of my markings so you can see them clearly. Pin then stitch 5 mm into the seam allowances. This is how it looks when stitched. I'm showing you here on a skirt. Since it was designed to have more fullness than the pants or shorts, the pleats are a little bigger. You can then assemble the upper part, consisting of the bib plus straps plus optional ruffles plus waistband, and the lower part, in this case the pants, shorts or skirt. We align right sides together and match sides and middles together like this. If we had ruffles, they would of course be sandwiched between the sides and the front, right here, so we pin all the way around. And at the back, we stretch the elastic so we can pin properly. I do this portion by portion and pin horizontally so as not to catch the elastic in the pinning. It's important to keep it free to simplify the stitching afterwards. We'll stitch at 7 mm, but we'll look at how to do it next, just after the explanation of the gathered option. For the gathered option, start by stitching 2 lines of gathering at the top of the front, from one side seam to the other. The first is stitched at 5 mm, the second at 10 mm. These gathering lines are for the front only, while the back will be gathered with the elasticated waistband. We can then assemble the upper part, composed of the bib plus the straps plus the optional ruffles plus the waistband, and the lower part, in this case the pants, shorts or skirt. The selvages are aligned right sides together, and the middles and sides are matched like this. You can now pull the gathering threads until the front coincides with the length of the bib plus side. Distribute the gathers evenly. The ruffles are sandwiched between the sides and the front, right here. At the back, stretch the elastic to pin. I do it portion by portion and pin horizontally so as not to catch the elastic in the pinning. It's important to keep it free to simplify the stitching afterwards. We stitch all the way around at 7 mm, which I'll show you right away on the machine. We start the stitching on the left side, so that we can first stitch the front part, which doesn't present any difficulty. It's when we get to the back that I wanted to give you my tips. Once you've reached the side seam, stick the needle into the fabric. Now you need to take hold of both layers and pull on the elastic so as to stitch on a flat surface without creating creases. Proceed portion by portion between each pin. Once you've stretched the elastic, it's not too difficult to stitch at 7 mm, although you should avoid stitching the elastic at the same time. To do this, don't hesitate to replace it regularly at the bottom of the fold. We can also remove the pins that initially held the elastic in the waistband, as this will allow us to slide the elastic as we go along, and so get as many gathers as possible behind the presser foot. The percentage of gathers is greater for the skirt than for the pants or shorts, so it may be a little more difficult to assemble, but it's a simple trick to do, and frankly not very difficult at all. I'll show you the stitching. This gives us a great finish, with no visible top stitching to hold the elastic in place. All that remains is to overcast or overlock the selvages together and remove the visible gathering threads for the gathered version. For the short version, we'll place a facing front and back with right sides together, with the tucks unfolded for now. Stitch the two ends at 7 mm and press the seams open. Repeat on the second facing. For the trouser version this time, we'll fold the lower leg facing right sides together and align the ends, keeping the tuck unfolded for now. Stitch the end at 7 mm and repeat on the second facing, as I've already done here. All that remains is to iron open the seams. I'll show you the rest of the assembly on a pants version, but of course the principle is identical for a shorts version. Place the facing right sides together around the lower leg, matching the inside seams and the side seams for the short version. It's the untucked selvage that's aligned with the lower leg. Stitch at 7 mm, which I've already done on the other side. Place the facing towards the wrong side of the garment. Reshape the ticks by 1 cm and pin. For the non-elastic option, simply top stitch the leg facing all the way around at 2 mm. For the elasticated option, we start by top stitching the facing, leaving a 3 cm opening at the inside leg seam. For the elasticated option, we cut a 1.5 cm wide elastic for the pants or 1 cm for the shorts, referring to the measurement chart in the guidebook. The measurement includes 2 cm seam allowances, 1 cm at each end. A safety pin is stitched to one end of the elastic and inserted through the opening left in the hem. Use the safety pin to guide the elastic through the facing and out through the opening. If necessary, you can pin the other end of the elastic to the garment to make sure it doesn't tuck into the facing, so you can start all over again. Make sure that the elastic has not twisted on itself in the facing. You can overlap the two ends of the elastic by 1 cm and stitch them together. Repeat with the second leg. Finally, tuck the elastic completely into the hem and stitch the missing 3 cm of hem. Then repeat on the second leg. For this chapter, we'll be making the crotch opening on a shorts version, but of course the principle is identical for a trouser version. For the shorts option only, we start by placing a facing front and back right sides together and stitching at 7 mm the side, and not the inside seam of the legs. These are the straightest ends. Press the seam open and repeat on the second facing. Now place the facing selvages, without iron hems, right sides together on the leg bottoms. For the shorts option, match the side seams together, taking care to keep the seams wide open. Again, for the shorts option, be careful to place the front facing against the front and the back facing against the back. Stitch at 7 mm. I'll show you on one side, but you'll need to do the same on the other. With right sides together, place the front button placket along the front crotch and align the selvages. At the bottom of the leg, sandwich the facing and fold in the 1 cm hem. Stitch at 7 mm along the entire rounded edge, from one lower leg to the other. Trim off the corners and notch in the front crotch curve, so you can turn the placket inside out later. For the non-elasticated option, turn the facing and front button placket wrong side out. Take time to form the corners. Next, form the 1 cm hem of the lower leg facing that you had previously prepared, and pin. Stitch 2 mm from the fold. I'll show you on one side, but you'll need to do the same on the other. For the elasticated option this time, we'll take a long length of elastic and mark in pen the length indicated in the illustrated guidebook. The width and length of the elastic will depend on whether you're wearing pants or shorts. Here, for shorts, I'm using a width of 1 cm. Place the elastic on the bottom front, just above the facing stitching line. Then stitch the end of the elastic into the seam allowances of the crotch. Turn the facing and button placket wrong side out, taking care to shape the corners. Reform the 1 cm hem of the facing. Tuck the elastic inside and pin it. Stitch the facing 2 mm from the folded edge, taking care not to stitch the elastic, which must remain free. You can now pull on the elastic until you see the previously indicated mark. Align this mark with the back crotch edge and stitch 5 mm into the seam allowances to hold the elastic in place. Finish by trimming any excess elastic. Repeat these steps on the second leg. Doing one leg after the other rather than at the same time saves a bit of elastic. Regardless of whether you choose elastic or not, continue by placing the back button plackets right sides together and stitching the small end corresponding to the back crotch at 7 mm. The seam is then opened with an iron. I'll show you both the shorts and pants versions. For the pants version in particular, you need to pay attention to the direction of the piece so that you stitch the end corresponding to the crotch and not the end at the bottom of the leg. The 2 back button plackets can now be placed right sides together and pinned. Stitch the outer curve and both ends at 7 mm. Trim off the corners, and I'll also trim off the seam allowances at the back crotch. Turn the facing inside out, taking care to highlight the corners. Iron well, and here's how it looks on both the shorts and pants versions. Place the back button placket right sides together along the back crotch, aligning the selvages. It's best to place the interfaced placket against the back. Keep the crotch seams wide open. I'm showing you here on non-elasticated shorts, but the principle is identical for pants, and for an elasticated version. Stitch at 7 mm along the curve, from one lower leg to the other, then overcast or overlock the selvages together. Seam allowances can be top-stitched as an option. For the back, stitch on the back 2 mm from the groove of the crotch seam, after laying the seams towards the back. For the front, stitch on the wrong side 2 mm from the unstitched edge of the front button placket. This step is optional, as the plackets will otherwise be held in place by buttons and buttonholes. To complete the opening, we need to embroider buttonholes on the front placket and sew buttons on the back placket, still facing each other. If we prefer, we could use snaps instead, in which case the male snaps would be on the back and the female snaps on the front. All that remains is to embroider a vertical buttonhole on each of the straps, 6 cm from the end, and to sew the button onto the middle of the back waistband. The buttonholes are exactly at the bottom of the ruffles, so that once the straps are buttoned, the effect is harmonious. You can also try the garment on the child to adjust the placement of the buttonhole so that it fits perfectly. You could also embroider several buttonholes to adjust the garment as the child grows. For the elasticated shoulder strap option, the straps may be a little thicker, and, depending on your sewing machine, the buttonholes may be a little more complicated to make. Likewise, when sewing the button, don't hesitate to leave a little slack so that you can get through the 2 layers of straps. And there you have it. Your Farah jumpsuit, romper or dress. We hope you like the result as much as we do, and that we've been able to help you make it. If you like this video, feel free to like it and subscribe to our channel. We can't wait to see your versions, so join us on Instagram with the hashtag #EKITYFARO. See you soon at Ikiti.